reviving the living landscape system of Lai Chi Ho for urban sustainability. Anna Yao is a project manager for HSBC Rural Sustainability Program at the University of Hong Kong and an accredited heritage conservationist. Anna Yao, you are most welcome to present your presentation.
Thank you, Shafaz. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everybody. Thank you, ISCAF and also UNESCO Bangkok to organize this webinar, and also inviting me to share my own project and case and research, which echoes to a number of key messages that Julius just presented. So today I'm the project manager from the University of Hong Kong. And today I'm going to talk about my rural sustainability program, which is a heritage conservation program and also community capacity building program of a rural landscape in Hong Kong. And this project is initiated by a local community, and we Hong Kong Dual team is the facilitator to help them to rejuvenate their local landscape system, which has been desert for 40 years. So before I talk about the landscape site, some of you may be surprised to hear Hong Kong has cultural landscape sites. And because the general impression of Hong Kong is a urban metropolitan city, as you can see in this picture, and it's a city densely filled by the concrete and tall buildings. But not many of you know that the urban areas only actually constitute 40% of Hong Kong territory. And indeed, the remaining 70% is countryside. And much of this rural land was once occupied by hundreds of self-sustaining villages. Self-sustaining is one of the key messages of the rural landscape system. And during the pandemic time, we all visit our own culture. And in Hong Kong, our own food culture is very deeply rooted in our daily life. And the rural landscape system is closely related to food culture and food production. So Lai Chi Ho is one of these many rural villages in Hong Kong, and is located in the northeastern part of Hong Kong, literally rural compared to the downtown Hong Kong. And it's a village of over 400 years of history, created by the Hakkers community who settled here in mid-18th century. And this site is a rural landscape site, as I mentioned, and is one of the oldest and largest settlement village in Hong Kong that has kept the most intact and authentic vernacular socio-ecological systems. And this site possesses rich stocks of tangible and intangible cultural heritage and social assets that derives from their rich experience to live in harmony with nature. So for example, the earthen houses, the traditional rituals, traditional food, and oral traditions to pass on the local Hakka languages and also feng shui principles. So as you can see in this picture, the village cluster house is at the center of this landscape. And at the back of the village cluster, we have the feng shui forest, which is one of the forests that is established by the local community to maintain the water, to provide sufficient wood sources for fields, and also to create a microclimate. And they also transform the landscape into farmland that makes use of natural resources like the streams, the water resources, to cultivate food for them, for the local community. They also established a temple that perform their own rituals that guide the community resilience to pass on some of the culture and customs. So as you can see in this picture, is literally the community is the center of this system. And their resilience and their wisdoms that accumulate in this landscape to maintain an active management of the natural resources has retained an equilibrium between people and the nature. And the interactions between people and nature have not only cultivate food, biodiversity, but also nature and accumulate wisdoms for sustainable living for centuries. And this traditional knowledge of maintaining a self-sufficient community became extremely important during the pandemic period, because we all relied on food delivery, for example, when the city is locked down. And sustainability of city become very important, and we try to rethink how can the city become more sustainable. And the wisdoms in this rural landscape provide some of the answers for us to find opportunities to overcome the challenging phase. But unfortunately, this landscape has been depopulated in the 1970s because of the change of economy in Hong Kong, from the primary agricultural production to light industries. And rural inhabitants have left their village for a modernized city life where goods and services are better provided. And it became a desert village site for over 40 years. So as you can see from the pictures, the farmland were covered by shrubs, and also some of the traditional houses were collapsed. And this is the picture taken in 1996 that you can see most of the farmland has been deserted and covered by vegetations. So in 2012, some of the retired homecoming villagers, they were born in the village. They are passionate to revitalize and rejuvenate their once dynamic Hakka village. And so, inspired by the village's passion, the Hong Kong U team worked together with the local community and facilitate them to revital the local landscape systems. And this is some of our work. I could not cover all our project works, but we try to facilitate them to introduce agricultural practices. And during the process, we do a lot of oral history interviews and to collect some of the wisdoms that has been practices that in this site. And now we have revitalized the landscape. It's now an active farming site, which provides some fresh food source for the city. And fresh food source is particularly important during the pandemic period, because when the city was locked down and people are restricted to, or they are not really willing to eat out, they try to look for local food source, and the local food source has to be safe, and the demand of the local food is increasingly high in this period. And by having a continuous and non-stop supply of local food sources is very important for the urban community. And indeed, I could share that during the pandemic time, the rural community actually, they have not been so affected by the pandemic because they have a quite self-sufficient life in the village. So I don't have much time, but I would like to summarize what we did in this site. As I mentioned, the rural landscape system encompasses a lot of local knowledges, including the Hakka indigenous knowledge. They have very intimate human-nature relationship. We know that if we have done some damage to natural environment, actually we could not achieve self-sustainability. And also the feng shui principles, which is a spirituality of the community, and also one of the guiding principles of managing the cultural landscape site, is closely related to the human-nature relationship and also the craftsmanship and skills they inherit from their ancestors. All of this make up a complete rural landscape system that make a self-sufficient and self-sustaining landscape. But this landscape has been deserted and degraded for 40 years. So our project is applying the living heritage approach that upheld the adaptive nature of the living heritage and to sustain the cultural heritage of the site. And by adding some of the modernized way of agricultural practices, we try to connect the rural landscape system with the mainstream economy. And by doing this conservation project, we does not only conserve the heritage, we does not only sustain the indigenous local system and also their wisdoms. We also have to harvest some of the knowledge that could be a innovative conservation that benefits the whole Hong Kong. And indeed, during our project, we found that some of the very indigenous knowledge can actually provide answers to address some of the sustainability issues in the contemporary urbanized society. For example, climate change by providing local food source, by reducing the carbon footprint, by providing a space for the public access and public leisures. We provide space for the well-being of people to explore the nature, and also provide a model that demonstrate a sustainable production and consumption system. So by doing by revitalizing the landscape, we found all these answers from our ancestors, and our ancestors actually sustain this knowledge through their indigenous knowledge system and also Ice Age. So during I think this is some of the results of our project. We try to empower the local villages to talk about their own culture, Ice Age. So they are playing a traditional card game to the urban citizens. And we also draw communities' efforts to come to this rural site and help to recover the site after the typhoon damage. And we facilitate them to continue their traditions, which is this is a decennial, once in every 10 years, traditional festival at the village. And by after 6 years of revitalization, we changed the whole landscape. We revitalized the landscape from a desert place to an active farmland. So, and some of the products actually is not only selling to the local, for local consumption, they are also for the citizens. And these are some ginger products, like turmeric products, that could connect the rural economy to the mainstream economy. And this rural landscape system encompasses the creation and recreation process of the tangible and intangible heritage. It's a significant ties with the comprehensive and integrated nature culture social linkage that offers timeless response to the ever-changing societal and environmental circumstances. And I hope my sharing could provide some insight on how sustaining the ICH, sustaining the rural landscape system could contribute to sustainability. And the contribution to sustainability would eventually help us to look for opportunities to address the challenges that we are facing in the current pandemic period of time. So this is the community is a mix of indigenous villages and also new settlers from the urban areas. And collectively together, we work together to revitalize this landscape system. So that's the end of my sharing. I guess I have echoes and reflect a lot of nature that have been pointed out by Juliet about the activity nature of ICH and also the role of ICH during the pandemic. So I hope to share a lot more with you during the Q&A session. So that's the end. Thank you very much.